bright lights, it's Angela. Welcome back to the Space Doctor series on the Architecting channel. Today I'm here with your predictions for the month of February. I am an architect who has made it my personal mission to demystify the science of design for well-being, something known by a fancy Latin word, salutogenesis, that means health generating. And to do this, I use my Saluted Genesis card deck, which has fun illustrations on it that help bring out the concepts. I've spent my whole career studying this. I've always been very, very sensitive to the fact that space feels like something, even when I was a little kid and I would do things like climb on top of the refrigerator or under the coffee table. And I noticed that space felt different when I experienced it from a different vantage point. I was very sensitive to openness versus enclosure. And I've really devoted my whole career to research around this. There's a lot of science here, and the deck is broken into two parts: fundamental concepts, which is what constitutes well-being, how do we define that, and five aspects, which are core theories my research has led me to identify as essential to making up salutogenesis that help to inform our design decisions. And this is a lot, I know. And that is why I have made this something that is easy to work with. So every week I draw a card from the fundamental concepts part and the aspects part. The pairing of those will affect which things I talk about. So you're going to want to like and subscribe, because I'm going to say different things about every card based on what it's paired with. There's a lot to say. I could go on for hours about any one of these cards, and you won't even remember that, and that would feel overwhelming. So this lets me really just focus on some very relevant points. I also want to point out that I am a feng shui practitioner, and I really am amazed. Feng shui is the ancient Chinese art of placement. So much of it was based on observations of how space impacted people's well-being. And now modern science, which I'm also studying, is really proving that a lot of that is true. It really does make a difference. And as somebody who's been in this profession a very long time, I can promise you space absolutely impacts us spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically. It is something that so many of us take for granted and tolerate in the form of bad design, and we don't have to do that. That is what I hope that you will walk away with as you watch. So for the month of February, the card I drew for fundamental concepts is resiliency. Resiliency is our ability to withstand and endure and bounce back from a setback. And that setback can be a lot of different things. But much like you see on the card, this is a hostile environment. It is concrete. And yet, in this crack, this plant has found just enough dirt that it can grow. And that is what resiliency is all about, finding that way to come back. Now, there's a lot of different forms of resilience. You can have health resilience. So if you get sick, how well can you recover? How well can you avoid even getting sick in the first place? Social resilience. So how well can you recover from, say, loss of a loved one or a breakup, bullying, maybe having to change jobs and have to learn a new system, be around new people, or a move that takes you away from close friends and family. All of those things can affect us. And if we have higher social resilience, we can get through them or help others get through them. There's infrastructure resilience. So How well are our municipalities, even our nations, designed that we are going to have reliable power, healthy, clean water that we have access to, clean air, transportation grids that don't break down? All of those things come into infrastructure resilience. And you see it reflected in things like building codes for seismic events or for high wind parts of the country. And when we do experience something unfortunate like an earthquake or a hurricane, those are usually the structures that remain standing and have minimal damage because they have resiliency baked into their design. There's also environmental resilience. So we've talked in the past on this channel about how there is no waste in nature. Nature can recover from even the most catastrophic events. People, not so much though. So when we see something like wildfires that have happened this year in California, or the hurricane and extreme rainstorms that caused so much damage on the East Coast in the fall of 2024, what can we do to bounce back more quickly from those? How can we have a smaller footprint on our planet so that we reduce the human impact that can sometimes fuel these events? How do we keep going, knowing that we live on a planet that is always changing? There's economic resilience. If we have economic resilience and something bad happens, we can replace, we can restore. If we have economic resilience, we can invest in better technologies. We can afford to repair and maintain so things don't break down. So think about all of that as you understand this idea of resilience. But then, how do we design very specifically? So, first of all, you want to understand the threats and the hazards in the situation. And these can occur at a lot of different scales. So, what about the room you are sitting in? Where are the threats or hazards in this room? Is there anything that is a safety concern in the room? For example, if you had young children, there might be certain things that wouldn't be in that room. You might have plug covers or cabinet safety locks, right? How easily are you aware of what's going on outside of the room so no one can walk in and startle you? How comfortable are you in the room? All of those things go into you having more resiliency when you are in that room. They can extend to the building that you're in. Is there good security in the building? Is there fire safety so that if something bad happened, you could get out? Can you shelter in place? Those kinds of things. We talked about the building's ability to withstand flooding or earthquakes or hurricanes, tornadoes. Was it designed with that kind of resiliency in it? There's resiliency even on the streets. Like, do we feel safe? Can we survey space? Is there defensible space? Or are there things like dark patches or blind corners where somebody could hide? There's a whole field of study called crime prevention through environmental design that specifically deals with how we can create spaces that can deter crime and be naturally safer and not have to rely just on things like fences or alarms or physical presence of law enforcement kind of people. So when we understand the risks and the threats in a situation, now we know where we want to target our design. We also need to think about vulnerability. The more vulnerable someone is, the higher the consequence will be if something bad happens. So, are we dealing with vulnerable person a vulnerable community that doesn't have a lot of resources, what will happen if the bad thing happens? Will they be able to recover, or will it just be an utter wipeout of a community or a devastation to a person that's really hard for them to recover from? All of that goes into this idea of resiliency. And now that you understand that a little bit better, and the fact that it isn't just a psychological concept, but that it has real presence in the way that the physical environment is designed, let's move on to our aspect card. So, what I drew for this month is calming cues. Now, calming cues comes from the aspect of salutogenesis called relaxation response. Relaxation response, or I restore, is all about the ability of our parasympathetic nervous system to reset after a stressful event. That means that the stress response gets turned off and healing begins. So, relaxation response is associated with the feng shui element of water. Water is very much in many cultures considered a healing element. Water flows. So, water is naturally restorative. If you throw a pebble into the water splashes, the water moves, but then the water resets. The ripple effect gradually dissipates. So that is why we have those two things associated with one another, paired up. Calming cues are just one way that we can help somebody cue that reset. So what you see on the card here is a tranquil, placid lake at night. So the water is calm and still. The full moon is illuminating the sky, even though it's night, so we can see where we're going. The stars that are breaking through here as the clouds move are giving us a sense of delight and fun and playfulness, something to aspire to wish on. So what are calming cues in design? Specifically, they are things like soft forms, so gentle curves versus harsh angles, cushions or soft surfaces, things that are easing in their transition, open spaces so that there is an ability to easily see what's going on. Our body gets very agitated when we're faced with uncertainty. So, having that sense of, I can see what's going on, it's open, that calms us down. Spaces that shelter us, where we can kind of cocoon in them and feel a little enclosed, maybe lower ceilings, those help to calm us down. And finally, sense of belonging. Now, this can happen in a lot of different ways. It can happen in the sense that you feel that you are allowed to be in this space, that it belongs to you, and that you can change it and adapt it to meet your needs. It can be positive association. So, say your beloved grandmother, who you were very, very close to, gave you a vase that always used to be in her house, and now it holds a place of honor in your living room. And when you're sitting in the room and you see the vase, you immediately have that sense of belonging because it belonged to someone you care very much about, and it has positive association. So we call those environmental anchors. But it also can happen culturally. So is the person or people who are using the space seeing that the space contains things that are relevant to their culture? So, are there artifacts from their culture present in the space? Is the way the space is designed to be used going to work with certain customs or traditions in their culture? I am from an Italian family and we have certain ways of doing things. I know even when I was looking for houses, I had to make sure that there was a big dining room because that idea of gathering around a table is something that for me is very important culturally. It affects how we do big family celebrations, like my son's upcoming high school graduation. And other parents I talk to who come from other cultural backgrounds aren't planning the kind of party I am. They don't need the same kind of space I need. So things like that matter a lot in design. And when we have that sense of belonging, we relax. We feel welcome, not like an outsider. We feel like we have agency in the space to use it the way we need to use it, and that's not going to be a problem. We feel like this is meant for us. So when we pair the two cards together, and I love how these two cards are working today. It is a beautiful, beautiful pairing because we get resiliency, which is about our ability to handle problems, adversity, to bounce back, to hopefully bounce back stronger and better than we were before we encountered adversity, paired up with calming cues. And just the fact that I drew a card from the relaxation response aspect, which is about that reset and that healing, is already a great pairing. But specifically, how do we calm? How do we show people that it's safe, that it's okay, and that nothing bad is going to happen, at least in the short term, that we can recover? Those are a beautiful, beautiful pairing. And if you'd like to hear more, remember to like and subscribe to the channel because what I choose to say is very much impacted by the pairing, and you will definitely learn something new every time I talk about a card, not just the first time. As always, you can learn more about these things with the links that I will put in the session description. Have a great February, everyone.